Nothing explodes, no one leaves in the night, no secret is shouted into the open. And yet, everything is changing. Heartland. Season 20 doesn't arrive with chaos, it arrives with pressure. The quiet kind. The kind that builds slowly inside a person who has survived everything she thought might break her. Amy Fleming is no longer fighting to stay standing. She's standing still, and that may be the most dangerous place she's ever been. Because when the world finally stops asking you to survive, it starts asking you something far more terrifying. Who do you want to be now? Heartland. Season 20 opens with a version of Amy Fleming we have never truly seen before. She is calm, capable, grounded. On the surface, her life looks steady. The ranch still breathes with its familiar rhythm. The people around her still lean on her strength. And yet, there is a quiet shift happening inside her that changes everything. Amy is no longer living in the aftermath of loss. She has moved through that fire. What remains is something far more complex, a life that continues, even when the pain no longer leads every step. This season positions Amy at a moment where survival is no longer the goal. For years, her choices were shaped by necessity. She did what needed to be done. She stayed because staying was the only way to keep things from falling apart. Strength was not a question, it was a requirement. But Season 20 suggests that Amy has reached a point where strength alone is no longer enough to guide her forward. The trailer hints at a woman who is beginning to feel the weight of unanswered questions. Not loud questions, quiet ones. The kind that surface when life finally slows down enough to hear them. Amy's future no longer feels like something that will simply happen to her. It feels like something she must actively choose. And that is where the tension begins. Choosing means risk. It means admitting that the life she rebuilt after loss may not be the life she is meant to stay in forever. The ranch, once a place of healing and safety, now carries a more complicated meaning. It grounds her, but it also holds her in place. Every familiar corner carries memory. Every routine carries comfort. But comfort, Season 20 suggests, can slowly turn into limitation if it's never questioned. What makes this stage of Amy's journey so compelling is its restraint. There is no breakdown, no dramatic turning point announced in the trailer. Instead, there is a sense of emotional pressure building quietly beneath her calm exterior. Amy speaks less. She listens more. Her silences feel intentional, heavy with thought. This suggests that the season will lean deeply into her internal world. The real conflict isn't happening around her. It's happening within her. And that internal struggle is far more suspenseful than any external threat. Another layer of tension comes from Amy's role as a mother. Lindy changes everything. Amy is no longer only responsible for her own healing. Every decision now shapes the emotional environment her daughter will grow up in. Season 20 hints that Amy feels this weight constantly. Her choices are no longer private. Moving forward isn't just about what she wants, it's about what kind of life she is modeling. That responsibility makes every possibility feel heavier, because choosing wrong no longer feels like a personal risk. It feels like a generational one. The trailer also suggests that Amy is beginning to question the identity she has carried for so long. She has always been the strong one, the reliable one, the person who shows up no matter how much it costs her. But Season 20 asks an uncomfortable question. What happens when being strong becomes exhausting? Not because the pain is too much, but because the role itself no longer fits. Amy has grown, and growth has created space. Space for desire, space for curiosity, space for fear. That space is unsettling. For someone who spent years just trying to hold things together, stillness can feel dangerous. When there is no crisis to respond to, you are left alone with your thoughts. And Amy's thoughts seem to be drifting toward a future she hasn't allowed herself to imagine before. The trailer hints at quiet opportunities, possibilities that don't demand her attention, but patiently wait for it. These are not demands or ultimatums. They are invitations. And invitations can be harder to face than pressure, because saying no requires honesty. Season 20 frames Amy's journey as a slow realization rather than a sudden change. Healing didn't bring clarity, it brought questions, and those questions refused to stay buried. Amy is no longer running from her past, but she isn't sure how much of it should follow her into what comes next. That uncertainty becomes the emotional backbone of the season. Every choice feels like it could protect something or cost something, and there are no clear answers guiding her. What makes this moment especially powerful is that nothing is obviously wrong. Life is stable, the family is close, the ranch still stands, and that stability creates its own kind of pressure. When nothing is broken, wanting change can feel unjustified. Season 20 suggests that Amy is wrestling with that guilt. Is she allowed to want more when she already has so much? Is it selfish to imagine a different future when the present looks safe? The trailer doesn't rush her toward answers. Instead, it invites the audience to sit with her uncertainty, to feel the slow tension of a woman who senses that standing still is no longer neutral, that staying, even when it feels safe, comes with its own cost. Amy's future isn't unfolding through dramatic action. It's unfolding through awareness. And once awareness takes hold, it changes everything. Season 20 begins with a powerful truth. Amy Fleming has survived her past. Now she must decide what to do with the life that remains. And that decision, quiet, personal, and deeply human, sets the stage for everything that follows. As Heartland Season 20 continues, the pressure surrounding Amy doesn't grow louder. It grows deeper. What once felt like stability now begins to feel strangely heavy, not because it's about to collapse, but because Amy is starting to feel the cost of carrying it alone. For most of her life, strength was her shield. It protected her family, her ranch, and herself. But this season quietly asks a difficult question. What happens when the very thing that saved you starts asking too much in return? Amy has always been the one others depend on. The calm center, the steady presence. Season 20 suggests that this role, while born from love and responsibility, has slowly become a weight she never put down. The trailer hints at a subtle exhaustion beneath her composure. Not physical tiredness, emotional fatigue. The kind that comes from always being the one who adapts, the one who absorbs pain so others don't have to. Amy isn't breaking, but she is worn, and that weariness is new territory for her. What makes this stage of her journey so tense is that no one is asking her to change. There are no demands, no confrontations. The pressure comes from within. Amy is beginning to recognize how much of herself she has quietly set aside in order to keep everything else intact. Her dreams didn't disappear. They were postponed. And now, in the quiet moments, they are resurfacing. Gentle, persistent, impossible to ignore. Season 20 uses silence to communicate this shift. Amy listens more than she speaks. She pauses before responding. Her reactions feel measured, as if she's no longer just responding to life, but observing it. That shift is significant. It signals that Amy is stepping out of survival mode and into self-awareness. And self-awareness can be more unsettling than grief, because it removes the excuse of urgency. When there is no crisis, you are left face to face with your own truth. Another layer of tension comes from the expectations surrounding Amy. Not spoken expectations, but the quiet ones. The looks that assume she'll handle it. The pauses that rely on her steadiness. The unspoken understanding that Amy will always be there. Season 20 suggests that she feels these expectations deeply, even when no one voices them. And the thought of stepping outside that role, even slightly, feels risky. Because change doesn't happen in isolation. If Amy changes, the balance around her changes too. This creates a powerful internal conflict. Amy wants to honor the life she rebuilt. She values the stability she fought so hard to create. But she's also beginning to sense that holding everything together may be costing her something essential. The trailer hints at moments where Amy seems caught between gratitude and longing. She is grateful for what she has, but gratitude doesn't erase desire. And Season 20 makes it clear that desire, once acknowledged, doesn't disappear quietly. There is also a subtle shift in how Amy views love. For most of her life, love meant sacrifice, staying even when it hurt, enduring without complaint. Season 20 suggests she may be questioning that definition. What if love doesn't always require self-erasure? What if choosing herself doesn't mean abandoning others? These questions linger beneath the surface, reshaping how she understands her relationships and herself. Amy's strength, once unquestioned, now feels complicated. Strength has kept her standing, but it has also kept her from asking for more, from wanting more. And that realization is uncomfortable because it forces her to confront a truth she's avoided for years. Being strong doesn't mean you stop needing care. And resilience doesn't mean you stop needing space to grow. The suspense in this phase of the story doesn't come from dramatic events. It comes from timing. Amy is beginning to feel that staying exactly as she is may no longer be possible. Not because something is wrong, but because something inside her is changing. And once that change begins, pretending it isn't happening becomes its own kind of loss. Season 20 positions Amy at a crossroads where strength alone can't guide her anymore. She must decide whether she continues to carry everything as she always has, or whether she allows herself to loosen her grip, even if that means disappointing others. That choice doesn't come with clear answers. Every option carries risk. Every path carries consequence. And that uncertainty is what makes this moment so powerful. Amy isn't afraid of pain anymore. She's afraid of standing still. Afraid that if she keeps choosing what's safe, she may slowly lose the version of herself that still wants to grow. This is where Season 20 deepens its emotional stakes, because the hardest battles aren't fought against loss, but against the quiet fear of becoming someone new. And Amy Fleming is standing right at that edge. As Heartland Season 20 moves deeper into Amy's journey, the emotional tension shifts again. The question is no longer whether she feels restless or burdened. Now, it becomes far more personal. What happens if she chooses herself? This is where the season grows most unsettling, because choosing yourself doesn't feel heroic to Amy. It feels dangerous. For someone who has built her entire identity around responsibility, the idea of prioritizing her own needs feels almost wrong. Amy has spent years putting others first, not because she was forced to, but because it was who she became in order to survive. Strength and self-sacrifice became inseparable in her mind. Season 20 suggests that untangling those two ideas is one of the hardest things she's ever faced. The trailer hints at moments where Amy appears thoughtful, distant, almost suspended between action and stillness. These moments aren't about indecision, they're about awareness. Amy understands now that every choice she makes will ripple outward. Choosing herself doesn't just affect her, it reshapes the emotional landscape of everyone around her. And that awareness weighs heavily on her. She isn't afraid of change. She's afraid of what change might cost the people she loves. There's a quiet guilt threaded through Amy's reflections. The guilt of wanting more when others are content with her staying the same. The guilt of imagining a future that looks different from the one everyone assumes she'll continue living. Season 20 treats this guilt with honesty. It doesn't paint Amy as selfish or ungrateful. Instead, it shows how deeply ingrained her sense of duty has become. Wanting more feels like a betrayal, not of others, but of the version of herself who survived so much just to keep everything intact. One of the most powerful tensions in this stage of the season is that no one is stopping Amy from changing, and no one is encouraging her either. The absence of external pressure forces her to confront the truth that the biggest obstacle in her path is herself. The trailer subtly communicates that Amy is beginning to realize how often she has delayed her own desires in the name of being needed. And now, being needed no longer feels like enough to define her life. There is also a growing sense that Amy's understanding of stability is evolving. Stability once meant safety, predictability, control. After loss, those things were essential. They kept her grounded when everything else felt uncertain. But Season 20 suggests that stability without growth can slowly become confinement. Not because it's wrong, but because people change. And Amy has changed. This creates a quiet internal conflict that never explodes but constantly tightens. Amy isn't running from her responsibilities. She's questioning whether responsibility should always come at the expense of her own fulfillment. The trailer hints that she's beginning to see how much emotional space she's given to others, and how little she's allowed herself in return. That realization doesn't bring relief. It brings fear. Choosing yourself means being seen differently. It means risking disappointment. It means allowing others to feel uncomfortable with your growth. Season 20 suggests that Amy is deeply aware of this. She knows that if she steps into something new, she may no longer fit perfectly into the role everyone has grown used to. And that loss of belonging, even temporarily, is terrifying. There's also a subtle shift in how Amy relates to time. The trailer suggests she is beginning to feel it move in a way she never did before, not rushing her, but reminding her that waiting forever is a choice, too. Doors don't always close loudly. Sometimes they fade, and Amy is starting to sense that some opportunities won't stay available just because she isn't ready to face them yet. This awareness brings a new kind of suspense to the season. Not urgency, but inevitability. Amy feels like someone standing at the edge of a decision she can no longer postpone. Avoiding choice once protected her. Now, it threatens to trap her. Season 20 quietly suggests that staying still may cost her more than moving forward ever could. Another emotional layer emerges as Amy begins to reconsider what love looks like when it's healthy. Love, for her, has always been about endurance, about staying, sacrificing, and holding on. But Season 20 hints that she may be learning a new version of love, one that allows space for individuality, growth, and self-respect. That realization alone challenges everything she thought she understood about connection. Amy's struggle isn't about abandoning her past. It's about deciding how much power it should have over her future. She carries her history with care, but she's beginning to understand that honoring the past doesn't require living inside it forever. And that understanding feels both freeing and frightening. What makes this phase of the story so compelling is its realism. Many people don't fear failure as much as they fear success, because success demands ownership. It demands accountability. It demands that you stop hiding behind necessity and start standing behind choice. Amy Fleming is reaching that moment, and Season 20 doesn't rush her through it. Instead, it allows the tension to breathe, to settle, to grow uncomfortable. The audience isn't asked to judge Amy's hesitation. We're asked to understand it. Because choosing yourself, especially after years of survival, can feel like stepping into the unknown without armor. And Amy knows that once she takes that step, there is no going back to who she was before. As Heartland Season 20 continues, Amy reaches a quiet but undeniable turning point. The uncertainty that once felt manageable begins to feel heavier, not because the questions have become louder, but because the silence around them has grown impossible to ignore. Stillness, which once gave Amy peace, now feels like hesitation, and hesitation starts to feel like loss. The trailer suggests that Amy is no longer just thinking about change, she is sensing it. There's a noticeable shift in her presence. She appears more alert, more aware, as if something inside her has finally accepted that time is moving forward, whether she moves with it or not. This isn't panic. It's clarity. The understanding that waiting for the perfect moment may actually be a way of avoiding risk. For years, Amy believed that patience was strength, that endurance would eventually lead to answers. Season 20 challenges that belief. It suggests that patience, when taken too far, can quietly turn into fear. And Amy is beginning to recognize how often she has delayed her own needs because waiting felt safer than choosing. One of the most powerful elements of this stage is how the season reframes stability. Amy's life hasn't fallen apart. In fact, it looks solid. The ranch continues. Her family remains close. Her role within that world is still clear. But Season 20 hints that stability alone is no longer fulfilling. Comfort without growth starts to feel hollow. And that realization carries a quiet ache that Amy can no longer dismiss. This phase of her journey is defined by internal pressure rather than external conflict. No one is forcing Amy to change. No crisis is pushing her forward. She is being pulled by possibility. And possibility, unlike pain, doesn't justify itself. It simply exists, waiting to be acknowledged. The trailer suggests that Amy is beginning to allow herself to imagine a future that isn't defined by routine or obligation. And that imagination feels both hopeful and dangerous. Another layer of tension comes from Amy's growing awareness of the example she is setting. Her choices now carry generational weight, not through speeches or lessons, but through the life she lives. Season 20 subtly suggests that Amy is considering what it means to model courage, not just resilience. To show that growth doesn't end when life becomes stable. That choosing yourself can coexist with love and responsibility. There is also a sense that Amy's relationship with home is changing. Home has always been a place of safety, memory, and healing. But Season 20 hints that home must also be a place where growth is possible. Familiarity alone is no longer enough. Amy isn't questioning whether she belongs. She's questioning whether she's still becoming. This creates a quiet, emotional tension with the people around her. Not because they are resisting her change, but because growth often creates distance before it creates understanding. Season 20 suggests that Amy is aware of this risk. She knows that stepping forward may temporarily disrupt the balance she has worked so hard to maintain. And yet, staying exactly where she is now feels like a different kind of disruption, one that happens slowly from the inside out. The trailer also hints at a shift in how Amy understands fear. Fear is no longer tied